You ready?
In 5, 4, 3, 2.
What's going on? This is Erik Allen, and you are listening to the Stealingjune podcast. Such an honor to be here.
Stealingjune.
Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stealingjune, a podcast. I'm your host, Jared. On today's episode, I am talking with Erik Allen about being raised in a broken home. He battled addictions, bankruptcy, and was even at one point in jail. But he was able to turn that all around. And now, Erik is a podcaster, speaker, and he focuses on helping entrepreneurs get known and noticed online. Erik is the founder of Erik Allen Media and co-founder of Operation Life HQ. He is a loving husband and a father of two. So, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Erik Allen. Well, Erik, thank you for joining me here on Stealingjune, a podcast. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing amazing, dude. Thank you so much for having me on. It's truly an honor to be here with you, Jared.
Yeah. I gotta say, too, I love your backgrounds. Well, your flags.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, it came from a sponsor of mine back in the day, man. Combat Flags, when they were a company, and they sent me both of these flags. And it was a one-man shop based out of there in North Carolina, man. Amazing company.
Yeah. Those are pretty cool. So tell me your story, man. Tell me how you got to be the front man of Erik Allen Media.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in like what I thought was a typical household, like broken home, unfortunately. But, I played Little League. I went to Sunday school. My dad would take my best friend Dave and I, literally have us jump in dumpsters behind big stores as they go find treasure. He'd take us out to the dump field and say, go find treasure out there on a Saturday morning, And, so that was the typical household. That was my childhood up until I was 11 years old. My parents got a divorce. And then I was like, I don't even know what divorce is. I didn't know anyone who had gotten a divorce. And it was a shock to my system. My mom ended up getting together with a guy who was very physically abusive. And I didn't understand why she stayed with him. I'd call the police 5, 6, 7 times and she would never press charges. And they did the smart thing. They got pregnant. And, I grew up in Eastern Washington State, and they decided to move us when I was in the middle of my 8th grade year up to Stevensville, Montana, population 1,200 people. Okay. And, this house was awesome that they rented on 5 acres, 2 ponds right by the Bitterroot River. It's just beautiful, man. The problem was this house, it had 3 bedrooms. It was one for them, one for my little brother who's a couple months old at the time, one for my younger sister who's 4 years younger. And they said, Erik, you live in the garage. So I literally had this half of the garage, a plastic sheet down the middle. And I had my bed on the side. Luckily, it was the side with the fireplace. And then the truck was on the other side. So it was like that fireplace kept me semi-warm during the negative degrees winters there in Montana. But, that was where I was at. I got kind of pushed out of the family at that point. But, the moment that really changed my life in that time was I was 13 years old. I came home arguing. Wasn't anything different than any other night, but I was brushing my teeth and I felt God going, man, you got to take a look around. And so I peeked around the corner. So behind me was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage door where I stayed. And as I looked down there, I see this guy on top of my mom, just boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, dude, I got to put a stop to this. So I walked up behind the guy, I grabbed a cast iron pan and I smacked him in the head and split his head open. And he turned around. It didn't knock him out. He said, what? Then as he did that, I took another swing and split his forehead open. And it was in that moment where it was like, I'd fallen over. He's standing over me. He's yelling. He's bleeding. My mom jumps up, punches him like 6 times in a row. There's blood splatting on the wall. It's just chaos, man.
Right.
Cops finally show up, take him to jail for the night. My mom doesn't press charges. I'm thinking I'm the hero, though. I'm like, man, I stopped this guy from possibly killing my mom. Well, I got kicked out of the house at that point. I had to go live with my buddy. It was a freshman year of high school at this point, and I went and lived with my buddy for the last 3 months of my freshman year of high school, man. And that set me on this path of destruction for the next 10 years, where I would experience drugs and alcohol, and barely graduated in high school, moving 21 times between ages of 18 and 21, and living in a rock star lifestyle with Universal Records for a year, man.
Right.
I was in jail at 18. I was bankrupt at 21, and just had a chaos of the next 10 years of my life, man. And it wasn't until I had really hit rock bottom. I was working for Universal Records, like I mentioned, but I got laid off my 1-year anniversary. This was around the time of Napster, if people remember that. It killed this industry. I remember when I got laid off, I was like, man, what am I going to do? And I was working at night at Starbucks, and this girl walked in and said, hey, we've got a cool college age event down at our church. Would you be interested in going? And I'm depressed. I have no friends, and literally just drinking myself to sleep every night. And I said, yep, this is an opportunity for me to make a change. And I said, what time do I need to be there? So I go there, and I ran into all these guys that I knew from 5-6 years earlier. I was like, dude, what the heck are you doing here? I'm clear on the other side of the state in the Seattle area at this time. And so it was just crazy. And I think God planted a seed in me that moment. It was a month later, Easter 2004. I woke up after a night of party, and I felt God going, dude, you're going down a path that's going to end your life real quick. And so I decided in that moment to quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. I called that girl. I got her voicemail. I said, hey, thanks for inviting me to that church event. Maybe I'll see you at the store sometime. And a month later, we were dating, and we've been married for almost 18 years now.
Wow. That's that's pretty cool.
So that's what got me on the path that I'm on today, man. It was really, I feel like, she was my angel that came and saved my life, man. It was literally, I put that on her, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my wife.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to real quick when you were a kid and your father finally left. Like, how did you cope with that? Like
when my parents got divorced?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I never saw my dad get abusive with my mom. I never even really saw them argue, so I didn't understand why they got a divorce. And it wasn't until years later that I found out that there was just some addiction and things like that going on. But for me, being 11 years old when my parents got divorced, I still saw my dad, all the time because he lived in the same city down there in Eastern Washington. So it was just kind of like this opportunity for me to grow, and it was different because I had to, sometimes stay with him on the weekends, and then I'd be back at my mom's. But I really wanted to stay with him, but there was like weird thing where I couldn't live with him till I was 13, and that's part of the reason why I ended up having to move to Montana. And so, my dad, he's battled a lot of stuff, man, but I'm proud of him for where he's at today, man.
Yeah, because that's like, I remember I was trying to relate that to me just a little bit. Because I remember I was at a Friendly's restaurant with my mom when she told me the news that she was deciding to get a divorce from my dad. Kind of a, different situation, but I remember the shock that it put me through.
Yeah.
And having, not really having that many people around me. I had my friend whose parents at the time were divorced and everything, and just trying to, I guess, cope with that disbelief, that shell shock that I had. So, so you were jailed at 18.
Yep.
Bankrupt by 21. Like, I can't imagine that those are... You're going to find... What is it? What am I trying to say? Those are quick life lessons for someone to have. So you get jailed at 18, you're bankrupt at 21. What, like, when you hit that bottom point, what was that like?
It was interesting because when I was 18 and I got arrested for having a bong, which was really funny because now it's legal in the state of Washington. But in 1998, when I was a senior in high school, it was illegal to have a bong. And so I got arrested. And so I had to go to jail though for 24 hours and it sucked. Like I was still senior in high school. I was 18 years old. It was in a different county. And me and my buddies were out camping. We had a bong with us and we had a bunch of weed with us. And I was the only one who was 18. The cops raided the campground. And so I got a citation, had to go to court and all this fun stuff, but ended up going to jail. And it was pretty scary, man. Like I weighed about 140 pounds, 145 pounds my senior year of school, right? And had no idea what I was doing. I literally brought a Bible with me. Because I just thought if I had this Bible with me, I'd be protected. I didn't know what I was walking into. I just knew I had to go to jail. And so I had to go to Dayton, Washington. And I got there and they had me put on the black and white chain gang outfit on. I mean, bright orange slippers. I had to take my mugshot and go into this open cell with probably 12 other guys, scary as hell. And luckily, in my personal cell where there was 2 bunks, there wasn't enough guys. I had that one to myself, but I don't think I slept the entire night, right? Like,
I wouldn't.
The place where they bring you the food and they set it outside the door where you can't reach it and they let it get cold and then they slide it to you. So it was just like this weird sort of thing for 24 hours. It was scary as heck, man. But that opportunity, you would think it would have scared me more to not do drugs. And I was on a year probation where I could have been tested for weed for the next year. But I had to just call into my probation officer for every month. And luckily he never tested me. I also never wanted to put myself in that place. So I quit smoking pot for a year, but it opened up the opportunity for me to drink more. And I became this heavy drinker. And, and so when I graduated high school, I had 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I woke up to a Post-it note on my bathroom mirror from my dad that said, "You can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out." And so I was like, well, crap, here we go. We're now jumping into this adulthood thing, right? And so I didn't know where to go stay. I stayed with an aunt and uncle for a while, and then I stayed with some friends. Between the age of 18 and 21, I moved 21 times, living off of couches here, a couch there, behind the couch, this house, sunroom, all over I could. And I would say that was definitely a rock bottom moment for me because I just didn't know. I was basically homeless at that point. I couldn't keep a job. I've probably had 30 plus jobs in my lifetime because I just couldn't stay at a job longer than a couple months. It was just like, let me go do this, right? Like, I think I worked at the Outback as a busboy, and then I worked at McDonald's for a first-time job, and I worked at, minor league baseball team, and I was a maid at a hotel for one day before I got fired. Like, just any job that I could get, like, I just did it, man. And so it was those rock bottom moments of looking back going, man, I don't understand how I continued to go through that, but I realize now that there was a plan and a purpose in my life. And once I realized that my past and other people's opinions don't define my future, that's when the doors of opportunity started to open up. I started to go, man, there's a bigger purpose for my life out here. I need to start sharing my story. I need to start making an impact, and I need to break those chains of abuse, addiction, rejection that sucked my childhood away. It will not happen to my kids. My wife and I both come from broken families. And so we knew when we got married and we said, I do, we were not going to get a divorce. There is days and years being married for almost 18 years that not every day in a year is going to feel like sunshine and rainbows, man. There's just like some
absolutely
days, right. But we knew that we wanted to break those chains of addiction and divorce and things like that. So our kids won't have to experience that. And they see us argue, they see us make up, they see us slow dance in the kitchen, so they get to see it all. But they also know that the strong foundation that we have through Christ for us is what allows our marriage to stay together. And that's just something for us that has worked for us. Obviously, other people can do whatever they want to do, but that's just where we choose to kind of put our faith in is in Christ.
Yeah, I would have to say I had not a similar story, but I remember talking with my grandmother one time about this because as kids we would go over to their my grandparents' houses. My grandpa was a pastor and worked other jobs on the side to keep it going. And they would get into little arguments.
Yeah.
Or arguments. And my brother just remembers, like, every time he spent the night, for some reason they were fighting about something. And Grandma and I had a conversation about it one day, and, you know, she told me that she had thoughts about leaving my grandfather before, but then she remembered that she made a commitment to God about, you know, love him, honor him, cherish him till death and everything. And, you know, that's what kept her marriage going.
Sure.
You know, in the final 3-4 years of his life, you know, things got better. And stuff. But I find that, like, it's hard because I set out to do the same thing that you and your wife did, breaking the chains of, for me personally, divorce.
Yeah.
Not having it go on in other generations. And,
yeah, totally.
Like, that's hard. That is, like, you know, no one ever told me how hard it would be to be like, because there was a time in my life where, you know, she wanted to leave. I didn't want her to leave. Then I wanted to leave and she didn't want me to leave. And then finally, like, after 4 gruesome years, I'd say, you know, things kind of finally settled down, and it's been good. It'll be 10 years next March.
Come on, man. That's awesome, dude.
Believe it or not.
That's awesome.
Believe it or not.
That's amazing.
Let's see. I lost my note. Oh, yeah, okay. That's where. Man. So you told me earlier when you were 13, and you beat your mom's boyfriend, and when you went to jail, you had your Bible with you.
Yep.
Or whatever. I wanted to know, I guess, what the, like, because you weren't a Christian at that point, so where was, like, how were you introduced to faith, I guess, or, you know, God, or something spiritual, like,
yeah.
How was religion first introduced to you, I guess, is the best way I can put it.
Oh, for sure. You know, I mean, I grew up in the church, so
Okay.
I up until I was 11 years old, you know, I went to church with my mom and my dad, and we went to a church where my grandparents were involved in the choir and all that stuff. But I was a kid who would go to church, so they'd send me off to kids' church, whatever, and I would, like, have a pocket full of G.I. Joes, and I would go, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and then I would just never come back. Right? I would go to the bathroom and play with my G.I. Joes, right? So, like, I was, and for some reason they would never come find me, which is weird, but, you know, but yeah, so that's kind of how it was, you know, I that was my first taste of Christ and going to church. Now, my dad's mom, my grandma, who I love to death, she is 88 years old, still prays to this day, every single day, for all of her grandchildren. And I'm the second oldest of 19 first cousins. So I come from a fairly big family, but she's been praying for me my whole life. And I think it's really her prayers that have got me back to where I'm at today. But, you know, so here I had this taste of Christ, you know, going to church when I was a kid. And then when I was about 19 years old, I was dating a girl who was a Christian, and I started going to church with her. And at the time, I gave my life to Christ, but it was more for giving my life to Christ because of her. It wasn't because of me, right? And so I know even today that I'm not a very religious person, but I'm a relationship person. And so for me, I knew that I had to get the relationship with Christ for myself. What couldn't be for anybody else. And so it took me years after we broke up. I went right back to struggling with addiction and drinking and drugs. Right. And so it wasn't until my now wife invited me to that church event that I just felt God going, dude, this is where you need to be. You need to stop going down and chasing these false things in your life that you think that are going to bring you happiness, but they're not. My drugs, the alcohol, the cigarettes, all that stuff I was consuming as something to fill my void. Right. But it wasn't until I said, all right, God, what do you want me to do with me? What do you want to do with me? Lead me, tell me what you want to do. And I surrendered everything to him at that point. And so for me, that's what worked. It's not my job to judge anybody. I could care less what, if anybody's Buddhist or Mormon or Catholic or, whatever, right. It's not my job to judge you for if you wear a mask or not, or vaccine person or not. Right. Like that's just not my job, just to love people where they're at. And so for me, this was the path that I took, that I felt like this was what was going to get me on the right path. And so it was early on that I kind of knew of church, but it wasn't until my early 20s that I really submitted my life to Christ.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I feel I say this about, my faith journey and everything, is I was spiritually privileged. Christian I had Christian privilege, meaning, I was in church every Sunday growing up, and, my parents actively involved in like I said, my grandfather was a pastor and everything. And that was kind of the reverse effect for me was, I always knew God, but I always took it for granted, on how I was living and everything.
Yep.
So you get married, and sober. Then you start. What'd you start first? The Erik Allen Media? How'd you get into the business you're in now? I guess that should be my question.
No, that's all good, man. So in 2012, I started a company called Top Rated MMA. It was an apparel company. And it was kind of the era of tap out. And so I, had no business plan, didn't know what I was doing. I just said, I'm going to try to get involved in the MMA space. I'm a big fan of MMA. And so I think we borrowed $2,500 from my brother-in-law to help start this company, bought a bunch of stuff. We had a big launch out in the Seattle area. We had a UFC fighter that we paid to come stand at our booth and wear our gear for the days. Everyone's like, who the heck is the Top Rated MMA? They got this MMA fighter, UFC guy there. And so that slowly started to die down. I started the Top Rated MMA podcast in 2017. I just wanted to ask MMA fighters, why do you want to get in a cage and get punched in the face? That was my one question. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was literally recording in a walk-in closet with bad lighting, bad microphone, no editing, uploading to YouTube and calling that my podcast. Right. And then somebody said, well, how can I listen to it on Apple? And I was like, what the hell is that? I didn't even know what Apple was. And so it was this opportunity for me to start figuring things out. And flash forward a little bit, I ended up launching the Erik Allen Show after I came across Ed Milet online. And he had the same values and beliefs as me. And so I started the Erik Allen Show in 2019. And we're about 175 episodes into that now. And I've been blessed to speak with guys like Ed Milet and Brad Lee and Tim Story and Bedros Coin and Jim the Rookie Morris has been on a couple of times. And, Dan Caldwell from Tap Out. And so just been blessed to speak to some amazing people. And so that's where we're at today with Erik Allen Media. I do the podcast. I coach people on how to podcast, and just launched a new company called Operation Life HQ, where me and a buddy, we're basically built a community of men that want to go from trials to triumph and helping them get feeling from lost to feeling like they're overcoming and being able to be successful in life. And so we just launched OperationLifeHQ.com and really excited about that, man.
Yeah. I actually was going to segue into my next question. So how does that, I guess I'll ask, how does that work? How do you sign up? If someone was listening, wanted to join Operation Life HQ, how do you sign up?
Yeah, OperationLifeHQ.com is the website. If you go there, there's a quick just intro video of myself, my business partner, Ian Inman. And then there's a button down at the bottom where you can schedule a call with us to kind of just figure out what this whole thing's all about, or you can just jump right in. It's a community. It's $750 a year to really access our community. And so we do 4 live coaching calls a month. And then we also have an access to like a Bible study and then a book club.
Okay.
And it's just really connecting other networking people, right? So it's like, hey, let's connect with this guy and let's go over some business Christian values. And for those that are making over $100,000 a year and they want to join our elite group, that's a $5,000 a year program. But our standard kind of jump in is $750 per year. But we really feel like we're bringing the value, the podcasting, everything like that to be able to coach them on not only their business, but their walk in Christ and marriages and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm kind of looking at the website as I'm listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you had your first podcast, and then you go into what made you choose podcasting, I guess, is where I'm going with this question.
Yeah, totally, man. I think podcasting for me was like what ended up happening was in 2015, I was bored with Top Rated May, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this thing. I actually tried to put it on sale. I put it in ad in Craigslist and said, who wants to buy this company? I had no idea. Mm-hmm. But I felt in my heart that I wasn't ready to stop. And I was like, how can I keep this name going? I had been a guest on a couple other podcasts prior to that, like, back in the day. And I was like, I wonder if I could just start asking MMA fighters, like that question, why do you want to get punched in the face? And as I started to get more into entrepreneurship, I realized that I wanted to ask the same question to entrepreneurs. Why do entrepreneurs want to get punched in the face? See, as entrepreneurs, we get punched in the face all the time. We get no's, we get rejected, we lose sales, we fail all the time. But what keeps us going? And so I wanted to ask that same question to entrepreneurs. And so that's where we are today. My show now focuses around like me having those guests on. And I want to ask them, what did you do to get to where you're at? What are you doing right now? And what's coming up down the road? And I also deep dive into those failures and successes of what got them going. And so that's where we're at today with the Erik Allen Show. Erik Allen Media. I work with brands on doing box openings, how-to videos, explainer videos, things like that as well. And so that kind of is the conglomerate of Erik Allen Media as a whole, is the podcast, the coaching, the content creation, things like that. And so it's I love doing it. I still work a full-time job, but this is what I do on the side. And hopefully at some point I get to walk away from the full-time job. But right now, this is what I'm doing.
Absolutely. Man. I definitely feel you there. Yeah, when I started out, so I had my friend who does my other side cast with me, Let's Go Dude. He was into streaming, and then I got into streaming, especially in 2020, and I had no idea what I was doing then, but shutdown happened, so there's nothing better for me to do than just sit around, play games and stuff.
Sure.
And so that's when I really got into it. And long story short, my competitive drive is absolutely great and awful at the same time, and it unleashed some demons in me.
Sure.
Because when I first started, I was like, oh, let me use this as a light to God. And when you're not doing that, it was a real struggle for me.
Sure.
And not being the person I wanted to be. And I was like, well, what can I do besides that? And I was like, you know what's chill? Doing podcasts and even learning how to do all this. It's, it's like, I'm not sure if I know exactly, like, Calendly.
Yeah.
Calendly.
Yeah.
Like, when you and I first decided to schedule this, you're like, oh, send me your Calendly link. And I'm like, oh, well, what now? And then I was like, oh, now I gotta go and get this all signed up and, stuff like that. So, what advice, like, through all your media, if any, what advice do you give about marriage, to young people starting off? I mean, you've been married 16 years and,
yeah.
I mean, that's a feat in itself.
It's a patience thing, man. And it's also, how can I serve her on a daily basis? Now I do a lot of things that I've learned throughout the years of how, what does it take for my wife to feel like she's being loved, right? So sometimes it's physical touch, sometimes it's notes, a lot of times it's words of encouragement. And so finding out what your partner's love language is and then going all in on that, right? And so for me, I love, like, during the week when my wife has to wake up with the kids and she gets them, ready and takes them to school and things like that. But I give my wife a foot massage every single morning, man. Like, she knows that, like, when I'm waking her up, like just before alarm goes off, I'm giving her a foot massage. And guess what? When I'm going into our bathroom, I have a little journal, and every single day I write a note in there. I date it, and I'm like, hey, babe, thank you. You're awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you doing this or that. And every single day she wakes up and she sees a new note from me. So it's doing things for our partner that aligns with their love language, right? As married men, we should figure out how we can help serve our wives, right? Like, how can we help them feel better, more confident, more beautiful, more sexy, right? Like, those are the things that I really try to do for my wife. And again, being married for almost 18 years, I fail at that a lot, man. Like, but I definitely try to stay on track and go, okay, I fell off track today. I need to get back onto this, right? And so it's really trying to figure out how can we, as a team, break the chains of abuse, addiction, rejection, and give our kids a life different than what we experienced, right? And so marriage is so important for my wife and I. And, we've gone through a lot. We built homes in Mexico for the first 2 years that we were married. I mean, not down there for 2 years, but we did 2 trips to Mexico. And it really opened our eyes, like, man, here's these people that love life and they're living on dirt floors, and we're coming down and we're building them a home over a weekend and getting to see their eyes light up, that they actually have a lock on the door, and we're all booger crying because we're like, so like they've changed our lives more than we changed theirs, right? So going through those experiences with your wife, that's what has helped us make us stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds... I feel like, for me personally, I might have to edit that foot massage part out, because if my wife hears you say that, then she'll probably be like, where's my foot massage? So we have Erik Allen here on Stealingjune podcast. We're going to take this quick commercial break, tell you about some of the other episodes coming out, and then we're going to finish up with Erik right after this. Hey, it's Jared. The host of this show that you're listening to. Want to find more Stealingjune content? Then go to this site, linktree.com/Stealingjune. That's linktr.ee/Stealingjune. There, you can find links to all my episodes and other social platforms I am on. So go ahead, click the button.
Awesome.
So I am back here with Erik Allen, and founder of Erik Allen Media, OperationLifeHQ.com, and you can find where can people find you? That's the most important question.
That's awesome. ErikAllenMedia.com. It's ErikAllen, ErikAllenMedia.com. I'm big on Instagram. So it's just Erik G Allen, Allen. I respond to every comment and every DM that comes my way. So I love connecting with new people. So if you're hearing this, you want to connect, check it out. I'd love to connect with you on there.
Yes. Highly recommended. And we just met, so
yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
So marriage. You've been married, you said 18 years, 18 plus.
Yeah, it'll be 18 years in 2023.
Okay.
Yep.
So what was it like? You started out in marriage. How do you guys do devotionals together? Like, what's that kind of like? Because I feel like that's an important thing that not all couples do. How do you, because for me personally, it's, you want to start, let's say, with your spouse and doing a devotional or whatever, but you don't know what their taste is, and I guess you kind of don't let God guide you to where you need to be. So what's that like?
Yeah, I think it's different for every person, every couple. I think my wife and I, we don't do a devotional book together. We spend a lot of time in prayer. So we pray every night with our kids. We pray every meal. We pray during the day before they leave the house and things like that. And so, and then it's really just having the conversation at the end of the night. My wife and I, before we go to bed, take 10 minutes, right? To just chat. I also am big on what we call 5 for 5. And it's basically when I get off work at 5 o'clock, I go downstairs and I get within 5 feet of my wife, hopefully closer, right? But it's within 5 feet of my wife and we have a 5-minute conversation. There's nothing else going on. I want to understand what her day went like, what happened, who did she interact with? I want to just spend those 5 minutes uninterrupted from the kids, right? So I say, hey babe, let's chat. I just want to understand how her day is. So those moments is what helps us draw closer. And if people don't know what the Love Dare book is, I highly recommend they go get the Love Dare book, watch the movie
Absolutely.
Fireproof, right? But those are great books that can help in your marriage. But for us personally, we don't do a devotional. I think it'd be great. My schedule's off, right? So I'm an early morning person and she's a night person. So we had to figure that out, right? So she stays up a little bit later than I do. I'm up at 4 a.m., which is crazy. People are like, well, why do you wake up at 4 a.m.? The reason I wake up at 4 a.m. is because my desire to be successful is bigger than my desire to sleep. And so for me, this is the time for me to get up and I work on prayer and worship and, personal development and things like that. That's what helps me do that. But I'm also not eating to my family time. So at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I can drop everything. Now I'm not 100% perfect with that, but I can, for the most part, drop everything from social media, business, all that stuff, put my phone away and spend that time really focused on my family.
Yeah, that sounds great. Now you just said you get up because at 4 a.m. because your purpose of being, or you want to be successful is more important than your sleep. But
yeah,
when does God tell you, okay, you need to slow this down a little bit? You need to get extra rest, or I
would say my rest day is sort of Sunday. Sunday is, we get up and I still I just don't set an alarm on Sunday, but I'm usually up by 5 o'clock in the morning or so. But when I get up, that's my time to go spend time in prayer. And I think for me personally, that's my time to draw closer to God in those early morning hours. Mm-hmm. Now I go to a men's Bible study on Thursday mornings, and I'm also part of a men's mentor group that we meet every 6 weeks, to just help draw me closer to God. But it's also a part of surrounding yourself with guys and that are living the life that you want to live, man. And so I found dudes that have great marriages, great businesses, great walks with Christ. And I just started putting myself in circles where I could interact and engage with those guys. And so that's what helped me. Those prayers of being around those guys that motivate me to be a better husband. They motivate me to be a better dad, better walk with Christ and build my relationship on that. And so for me, those early morning hours, man, are so important. And yeah, I think when God says slow down, it's Sundays, it's after church. I like my Sunday afternoon nap, but here's the key: is I set an alarm only an hour and a half at most on a nap. That's all I can do. If you sleep longer than that, you're going to wake up drowsy. So an hour and a half, but I'm usually sleeping about 45 minutes at most on my nap days. But yeah, Sunday is my kind of slow down a little bit day, but I don't like to pull the pedal off completely.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel you there. So, Erik, it was an absolute honor to, I feel like there's more of this conversation to have in such a short amount of time. I absolutely honored to have you here on Stealingjune podcast and everything. I hopefully, as I grow and get bigger, have you back on, see how you're doing with your businesses and adventures. It sounds like, and maybe even learn more from your life experiences. And
yeah,
everything
man,
like that. So one more time, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, ErikAllenMedia.com, OperationLifeHQ.com, and then on Instagram, just Erik G. Allen is the my handle there. Erik Allen Media on YouTube, so you can catch all my podcasts. They drop every Friday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific. So they drop all that. And I do a daily video every single day. It's usually about 30 seconds. I just love to throw some encouragement out to folks, so you can check out the short on YouTube or on my IGTV. ErikAllenMedia.com, Operation Life, HQ.com, man, and love to just connect with new people, man.
Yeah. So great to have you.
Such an honor, man. I appreciate it.
And everything. And we will catch you next time. And I will be back hopefully next week, everyone, with another episode.
You have been listening to Stealingjune, a podcast. Stealingjune is a ceramic production and was created, written, directed and hosted by Jared Warren. For business inquiries, comments, or requests, please email us at ceramicprod@hotmail.com. That's SERAMICKPROD@hotmail.com. All rights reserved. 2022. 1 Timothy 1:15.